Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you what Great League at 3270 ELO looks like. Today, I ran this Hippowdon team up to 3272 ELO, which should be right around top 50 worldwide, and the games were pretty insane. This team features Mantine as the lead, Licky Licky as the save switch, and Hippowdon as the closer. I'm running Mantine and Licky Licky to learn their damage ranges ahead of casting the World Championships this upcoming weekend, and Hippowdon just because I think it's one of the best anti-meta Pokemon right now. One quick note before we hop into the Hippowdon action: if you enjoy watching content like this, please make sure to leave a like on this video and double check that you are subscribed. My analytics tell me that a lot of people who watch the videos aren't actually subscribed, so double check, make sure you're subscribed, and without further ado, let's hop into it. We move to game number 1, and it appears I'm not the only person who's recognized that Hippowdon is a serious threat right now. I'm leading Mantine in Hippowdon, and the speed at which Hippowdon reaches Weather Ball Rock is just absolutely absurd. Every 9 turns, big super effective damage onto the Mantine. I farm up to the Water Pulse, bait with the Twister, and hold my breath, but thankfully they do put up the shield. I know that I barely don't get 2-shot here. Eventually in the 2s, I will get Sand Attack down, so my opponent should look to go for the catch. So I farm up, Blind Switch into the Licky Licky as my opponent sends in Mantine trying to catch the Water Pulse. If I had waited to see the Mantine switch in, it would have been too late. I would have been sniped down by a wing attack, so I had to blind switch into Licky Licky, predicting that catch attempt, and now I still have that Water Pulse preserved for later in the game. Mantine fires off a Water Pulse. I'm able to make it to the Shadow Ball. This Shadow Ball should be erasing Mantine from the field of play. Shadow Ball is going to connect. Mantine gets KO'd. Back in comes Hippowdon. I bank a Body Slam, switch back into the Mantine, and I will fire off the Water Pulse. Water Pulse should be guaranteeing that final Protect Shield. This Hippowdon is going to get the full Sand Attack down, and they are absolutely loaded on energy. I know that I have energy on the Licky Licky. I'm just going to bring in Hippowdon, and I'm going to double shield. I'm really hoping that Hippowdon is going to have a positive matchup in the back. If it's something like a Tinkaton or a Kanto Ninetales, this game is already over. They fire off the back-to-back Earth Powers. In the back is a Azumarill, and that is not what Hippowdon was hoping to see. The good news is I still can hit for some pretty solid neutral damage here with Earth Power, but my goodness, I still think I'm in quite a bit of trouble. My opponent's going to fire off Energy. Ice Beam will hit for super effective. Ice Beam connects. Hippowdon hangs on, and I will make a parting gift of a last-second Earth Power. But I still don't know if Licky Licky has what it takes to win this game. I bring in Licky Licky, throw 2 rollouts, CMP type, Body Slam to the Ice Beam. This is the max amount that I can overfarm. Body Slam will knock out a Azumarill. Back in comes Hippowdon, and now it all comes down to this. The Shadow Ball KO the Hippo. This is going to be very close. Shadow Ball lands. Hippowdon gets KO'd. We somehow survive. Hippowdon onto Azu, and we get the win. We pick up a great lead in the next match, Mantine into Dondozo. My opponent save switches into their own Mantine, and you might be a little bit surprised that I'm not immediately bringing in Licky Licky. Mantine, up a tiny amount of energy, actually has a really strong ability to flip Licky Licky, so I'm actually needing to stay in and fire off the Twister just to get a little bit of chip damage in order to guarantee that matchup. Mantine lands the Water Pulse. I know that Body Slam will not knock out here, so I decide to full send the Shadow Ball. But if the Shadow Ball gets shielded, then suddenly the matchup is not so clear. I'm just going to fire off the Body Slam because I know if my opponent is shielding once, they're going to be double shielding, but I really don't want to lose switch advantage. Hippowdon would not be a big fan of dealing with those super effective waterfalls from Dondozo. My opponent's going to fire off more energy. I'm going to respect the Water Pulse because Water Pulse would take the knockout, and I'm going to throw 2 to overfarm. I overfarm by 2, but they get the catch. They save the Mantine, and in comes Umbreon. I don't have a particularly strong answer to Umbreon, so I'm going to rebank the Body Slam and then bring in Hippowdon. The switch timers are misaligned, but Hippowdon should do quite well here just due to the fact that Umbreon can't really do any damage neutrally. Umbreon lands the foul play, that really doesn't do anything, and now I can just start spamming out Earth Powers with Hippowdon. Earth Power will connect for some very solid neutral damage, and my opponent does get the defense drop. I'm able to make the Earth Power on the CMP type, but the switch timer's up, and they catch again, this time onto Mantine. The good news is Earth Power will take the knockout. Mantine's energy has been lost, but they still have an Umbreon that has a ton of energy. In comes Dondozo, and I immediately pivot out into the Mantine. I need to keep farming here, because I need to ensure that I have a Twister plus a Water Pulse. My opponent will have an ability in the future to try and snipe me down with the Umbreon, and I have to have a Water Pulse ready to predict it. So I fire off the Twister, switch timer will be up, I click the Water Pulse, they send in the Umbreon, and we get the call right. My opponent had been making catches left and right, outplaying me, honestly, pretty significantly in this game. But by getting that one call right, predicting the hard Umbreon switch in, sniping them down with the Water Pulse, the energy has been lost, and now this game is a win. I can bring in Hippowdon. I believe I should have got the Earth Power there, but I don't know if I got one turn bring in because it's Competitor's Cup, or maybe I guess I could have been on my 13 cycle. But either way, we should be in a good spot because we have energy on the Licky Licky. I can fire off Shadow Ball, Dondozo falls, and we're able to get the win. We move to the next match. Mantine going to be leading this game into a Galarian Corsola. Now, this is a pretty terrible matchup. Unfortunately, this is a matchup where Mantine, which normally has pretty good matchups into basically anything you could encounter, Mantine is really going to struggle here. Power Gem connects for big damage, and maybe a better Mantine could survive and make it to a Water Pulse plus 2 Twisters, but my Mantine, it's okay IVs, but it's not good enough to be able to make it there, so unfortunately, I'm going to have to hard pivot out here. I build up, fire off the Twister, and I'm going to throw 2 wing attacks, and then defer that second Astonish onto Licky Licky. Licky Licky is going to be answered with Carbink, and that is really not what I needed to see. Carbink does a very good job at shutting down Licky Licky neutrally. I fire off Shadow Ball, and Carbink just simply does not care. However, there is an ever so slight desync of the switch timer, and I'm hoping that I can use it to my advantage. Moonblast connects, that's some pretty significant damage, and now I can fire off the Shadow Ball. My switch timer should just be up, and I can get a Powdon on the field. Switch timer's up, in comes the Hippo, my opponent able to pivot out. That was not much of a desync whatsoever, and they bring the Mantine. However, even a tiny amount of a desync in a switch timer can still matter, because Hippowdon up energy can be a very big problem for Mantine. Mantine does have enough for the Water Pulse. Mantines do love to bait here. I put up the shield, and I immediately regret it, as my opponent did go for the Twister bait. Sand attacks have added up enough to where they're basically in Weather Ball range now, so they will put up the shield. They're going to farm back up to the Water Pulse, and I will use my final Protect shield. Unfortunately, it's a double bait from my opponent. I'm going to farm up and fire off the Weather Ball right before they're able to make their Twister. This Weather Ball will guaranteed take the knockout. My opponent puts up the shield and they throw, but this is only a Twister. This sets up a 50-50. Will they go for the combo play? I say no. I stay on the field and they go for the combo play, and that is going to end the game. I made the read that they would stay in and try and overfarm before sniping, but they just went straight for it. So unfortunately, that is going to seal my fate here. I'm able to get a nice catch onto the Mantine, and even if I get the full rollout down with Licky Licky, there's just simply too much of a Carbink. So many of these very high ELO Open Great League games can be decided by those momentary decisions. Do you call your opponent switching in? Do you blind fire off the charge move? Do you go for the catch? We blind fired off the charge move in the previous game and that won it for us, but this game we did not get the prediction right, and that ended up costing us everything. We move to the next match, shooting Mantine into Shadow Quagsire. Quagsire, even despite Stone Edge, ends up pivoting out, and they're going to save switch into Thievul. I don't have an amazing answer to Thievul on this team. I'm just going to stay in, fire off the Twister, and then wait for Thievul to throw a charge attack. Thievul can never really do a lot of neutral damage to Mantine because of Mantine's bulk, so I'm just going to look to absorb energy, and then after the Icy Wind, I can pivot out and bring in Licky Licky. Here, arguably, I should have fired off the Body Slam instantly on alignment just to guarantee that I could have got rid of the Thievul. Thievul's going to debuff me with Icy Wind, and now they're going to bring back in the Shadow Quagsire. Shadow Quagsire will no longer be two-shot by Shadow Ball due to that Icy Wind debuff, which means they can overfarm quite considerably. That's why I'm actually quite surprised when they fire off energy here, because no one charge attack will knock me out. And this is when I learned this Quagsire is not on Stone Edge, they're on Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb Quagsire was very common in previous seasons, but with Pokemon like Mantine around, in my eyes it's not really a viable moveset, because Mantine just completely obliterates Quagsire to the point where Quagsire can't really do much of anything. My opponent pivots out, their final Pokemon in the back is a very strong anti-Mantine as to be expected, as in comes Charjabug. But now Charjabug, after putting up a shield, is going to have to deal with a very angry Hippowdon, and Hippowdon should have everything that it needs in this moment to pull off the sweep. I will need to be incredibly precise with my energy management, but as long as I manage my Hippowdon energy well, I should be in a winning position. Weather Ball Rock lands very nice damage onto the Charjabug. They fire off the X-Scissor, and now they're on their 3 cycle. So I can just throw 11 sand attacks. My opponent's going to pivot out and bring in the Quagsire. I realized Quagsire would make an Aqua Tail if I tried to farm down, so I will fire off Weather Ball right before that energy is available. So Quagsire has been KO'd, back in comes the Thievul, and before Thievul gets a move, I'm firing off this Weather Ball as well. Thievul will put up the Protect Shield, and now I just need to farm up until 2 sand attacks before the back-to-back Weather Balls. If I can get there, this game is a win. So I farm up with a Powdon, and that's going to be 2 off of that Weather Ball Rock, and that's going to guarantee the win. Because Volt Switch is a 4-turn move, so if I'm 2 off, I'm always going to get that charge attack. If I was on new system, I could have farmed up until 3 before the move and won the game, but damage registration error, not super consistent on the old system, so we're going to play to our guaranteed win con. We move to the next match, very strong lead, Mantine into Feraligatr. Feraligatr is staying in, which does surprise me quite a bit. Usually when it comes to Pokemon you do not want to disrespect in the Go Battle League this season, Mantine would be very high on that list. Mantine is just incredibly strong. At the World Championships, it's going to be one of the highest usage Pokemon, very easily in the top 6, maybe even in the top 4. I can fire off Twister number 1, immediately go for Twister number 2, and this should just about take the knockout. Feraligatr survives, but they're getting farmed down. My opponent brings in a Shadow Kanto Ninetales, and this is a Pokemon that my team loves to see. I have 3 strong answers to the Ninetales. I land the Twister just to get some chip damage and then bring in Licky Licky. It might seem a little bit crazy to not farm up to a Water Pulse, but my opponent always would have CMP-tied the Water Pulse with an Energy Ball. So instead, I just bring in Licky Licky, tank that Weather Ball, and then undertap the Body Slam. I just want to get a shield advantage. If I can set up a shield advantage for a Powdon, I'm always going to be in a winning position. Ninetales can throw whatever they'd like. It doesn't matter. It's just simply not going to take the knockout. This time, they read the undertap, and they will play to the CMP tie. So Ninetales will KO Licky Licky, but now I can bring in a very angry Hippowdon. I'm going to shield once, fully stand attack down, and my opponent should pivot out here to deny that energy. In the back, oh no, they have Tinkaton. My Hippowdon is about to absolutely feast. I can just stay in here, fire off the double earth power, and easily take the win. I decided to get a little too fancy here. I try and go for the catch. There's no reason to switch out here. This is arguably just a lose con. The good news for me is that I should still win the game anyway, but switching when you're up energy, I kept this battle in as a very good example of what not to do. This catch attempt is pointless. If you can stay in and win the game, why would you ever go for the catch? The good news for me is the Ninetales is never making a move, and with the Water Pulse landing, they're now firmly in Weather Ball rock range, so I can just throw one Sand Attack and the Weather Ball. That's going to be the end of that Tinkaton, and then we can just Sand Attack down the Ninetales and take the win. So, a pretty convincing win from us, but a pretty bad misplay in the end game. It didn't cost us that game, but it definitely could have. We move to the next game, and that's a Pokemon that I haven't seen in a while. Mantine into Shadow Dusknoir. Now, Shadow Dusknoir is significantly worse on new system than old system. Obviously, these games are played in Competitors Cup as I prepare for casting the World Championships. But on the new system, obviously with the new damage registration error always being consistent, longer turn duration fast moves do perform worse. We're able to get a nice Shadow Punch catch there from the Dusknoir onto Licky Licky, preserving the Mantine, and they're going to send in a Shadow Bug-Bite Fortress. I'm going to fire off Shadow Ball. My opponent will put up the shield, but the crazy thing is, I think I'm actually outside of a range where Rock Tomb plus several Bug Bites can take the knockout. They go for the Rock Tomb, they try for the Farm Down, and they can't get it. I really don't play a lot of Licky Licky, but my goodness, this Pokemon is an absolute terror. Shadow Ball lands, I pivot back into the Mantine, and my opponent's going to pivot out and bring in the Dusknoir. I'm going to put up the shield. I just always want to farm up to a Twister plus Water Pulse. If I can get there, I feel like I'm in a pretty good position. I did not want to take the third Astonish, so I'm just going to throw an alignment here. My opponent's always going to end up no shielding, but I have the Water Pulse in case my opponent decides to bring back in that Fortress. The Fortress did store a decent amount of energy. The final Pokemon in the back is going to be Togekiss. This is a very cool Pokemon, one I haven't seen in quite some time, but switch timer's up so we can bring in the Hippo. Hippowdon fires out the Weather Ball Rock, there's the catch onto that Fortress, but I can just full charge it. I should be able to get the Sand Attack down, and they do not get a lot of Bug Bite damage. My only lose con is if my opponent has Dazzling Gleam. Aura Sphere is never going to knock out, so I will put up the shield, and oh my goodness, they actually had it. They had the Dazzling Gleam, but we sniffed it out. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We move to the next game, Mantine into Shadow Alolan Sandslash. This is a very negative Pokemon for this team to see. Sandslash usually has water types in the back. Licky Licky is almost always very, very strong into Sandslash teams, but unfortunately if they have a bunch of water types in the back, then what is my poor Hippo going to do? My Hippo is probably not going to be doing anything in this game. My one win condition would be if I bring in the Hippo after losing lead, and they bring in a Jellicent, and then I can hard switch lock it onto the Licky Licky. If I can get the Jelly onto Licky Licky, I should be in a good spot. My opponent pivots out, they bring in a Azumarill, and I'm making the call. This is going to be Jellicent in the back. If it's Jellicent in the back, then my Hippowdon is not going to have play. So I'm actually going to stay on the field with Hippowdon into Azumarill, one of Hippowdon's worst matchups, and just burn the Hippowdon here. I'm trusting the fact that Licky Licky will be able to take home this win for me. Earth Power, first one is shielded, second one is going to connect. I know shield as they knock me out with the Ice Beam, but they go for a Play Rough, and I actually survive. That's a pretty big surprise. They're on Play Rough plus Hydro Pump. Usually Hydro Pump is Ice Beam plus Hydro Pump, but it appears they just don't have Ice Beam. Now I'm going to farm up to 100. Normally I don't like going over 100, but I do want to exit with a Shadow Ball loaded. The Sandslash, importantly, does not have a charge attack either. The final Pokemon in the back is going to be Mantine. So, not the Jellicent I was hoping for, but Licky Licky up energy should do well here. My first Shadow Ball is going to connect for very nice damage, and I immediately fire off Shadow Ball number 2. This could potentially put them into farm down range. My opponent opponent will put up the shield. That is unfortunate. I definitely should have considered baiting. Water Pulse would put me pretty low, so I put up the shield just to get baited. They're now going to outpace by a turn. I wait the turn, try for the catch, but it's a simul switch. Hippo into A-Slash. A-Slash would have made a move. I'm forced to fire off the body slam with Licky Licky, and unfortunately, my opponent should now have a guaranteed win condition of going double Twister. Water Pulse, I should barely survive, but double Twister will do more. They fire off the first Twister. I can make the body slam, but unfortunately, body slam is just simply never knocking out here. The body slam connects. Mantine survives. We made it as close as we could off of that terrible lead and terrible mid-game matchup, but unfortunately, we didn't execute well enough, and we take the loss. We move to the final match, picking up a great lead Mantine into Shadow Primeape. My opponent safe switches into Tinkaton, and I'm immediately going to respond with Hippowdon. If Hippowdon ends up getting double Bulldoze baited, this could get a little bit ugly, but they full send Gigaton Hammer. That is very, very nice. Now I can overfarm massively. I'm just shy of 100 energy here as I full send the Earth Power. Earth Power is going to connect. Tinkaton gets KO'd. And the good news for me is that it's not like the Primeape is going to be able to do anything to the Mantine. They have to shield the Primeape, otherwise they get one shot. They don't shield the Primeape. They do get one shot. And this game is just over. My goodness. It's a Fearow in the back. They're hoping Fearow will be able to sweep, but I still have an entire Mantine. If I wanted to not show third, I could do that. However, I assume the fastest way to make them concede the match will just be to bring out the Licky Licky. So we let Hippo get farmed down, bring in the Licky Licky, and there it is, my opponent will concede the match. All in all, I ended up having some really fun games with this team, and it worked quite well. It went very positive up to 3272 ELO. Unfortunately, not quite up to 3300s. We are almost at my season high for ELO though. Maybe if I can get a 4-1 set to start off the day tomorrow on stream, then we can break into the 3300s, because hitting 3300s before I'm able to leave for San Francisco would be incredibly cool. Now, this team didn't actually start with these three Pokemon. Initially, I had Altaria, Licky Licky, and Hippowdon, but after playing Altaria for a few games, I was reminded why Altaria has basically vanished out of the competitive meta. Altaria just really feels like a Pokemon that doesn't have a lot of positive matchups right now. As the Altaria, you're basically just hoping you run into Kanto Ninetales. Almost anything else you could encounter would actually be pretty catastrophic. So Altaria is not a Pokemon that I think is particularly strong right now. I think that Mantine generally does what you would want Altaria to do, but strictly better. Mantine ended up feeling shockingly neutral. Obviously, if you run into something like a Unova Stunfisk or a random electric type like Hisuian Electrode, that would be a pretty negative matchup. But the fact that Mantine has real play into Licky Licky is something that I really grew to respect, as the Licky Licky player constantly switching into Mantine and losing switch advantage, and as the Mantine player leading into some Licky Lickies. I think it's probably worst matchup in terms of neutral damage across the board is into Galarian Corsola, but I assume that a higher rank Mantine could actually make it to a third charge stack there, and if you're able to either make the third charge stack or pressure them to throw again, then that's a very acceptable losing zero shield scenario. So I'm of the belief that Mantine is kind of the flyer to go for right now as far as the Open Great League. Licky Licky, it just does pretty standard Licky Licky things. I don't really run it a lot because I find it a bit of a boring Pokemon, but today's sets definitely reminded me it is a strong but boring Pokemon. And last but definitely not least, I cannot rave enough about Hippowdon. One thing that I really like about Hippowdon is there are quite a few Pokemon that have access to this rock ground coverage, but Hippowdon specifically specializes in the fast rock coverage. And in a meta environment where Mantine is as safe as it is, I think having the faster rock coverage is a plus. Whereas if you run into something like the Marowak is very strong, but it more specializes in ground damage faster rather than the rock damage. So if Marowak ends up into the Flyers, that can be kind of a rough matchup. Whereas Hippowdon actually gets same type attack bonus on its Earth Power, so Earth Power hits really hard neutrally. A problem that I had with Dunsparce when I ended up trying it was Dunsparce never really does any neutral damage, but I think Hippowdon in my eyes is kind of the best of those rock ground coverage Pokemon. I really like that the regular Hippowdon, especially at high rank, can live a surprising amount of charge attacks, like in the Azu game where we were able to tank the Ice Beam, which was super effective. And I think the fact that its energy always being useful because of that rock ground coverage, basically being unwallable with the exception of like a Chestnut, which isn't a played Pokemon, is something that I can really rely on in a lot of games. Even if I end up in a rough spot, I know if I can get up energy with Hippowdon, Hippowdon is always going to be able to provide consistent damage and consistent play no matter what my opponent's Pokemon is. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so incredible, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.